Welcome to the fourth part of Noble Gold's National Debt Series. In a series of videos, let's understand some of the concepts that are affecting the value of your money. We've so far learned on how and why the U.S. needs to borrow money. Let's talk about how we can repay our debts. There are two parts, our GDP and our tax revenue. Let's talk about GDP first. Gross domestic product, or GDP, is the total market value of all final goods and services produced in a country in any given year. Therefore, if you want to know what our GDP is, we need to add all of our spending that takes place in the economy. There are two different ways of computing this. One is the expenditure method. So we add all of the following together: personal consumption of durable goods, personal consumption of non-durable goods and services, gross private investment, which includes fixed investments and inventories, plus government consumption and gross investment, which public sector expenditures for services such as education and transportation, less transfer payments for services such as Social Security, plus net exports, which are simply the country's exports minus its imports. And I know what you're thinking, what are those? This leads me to the next point. GDP is hard to measure accurately. Some economists have simplified this by comparing interest expense paid on the national debt expenditures made for the specific governmental services such as education, defense, and transportation. In other words, how much do we pay for government services compared to the interest we paid on our debt, to sort of simplify it. And that's kind of easier to wrap our brain around. However, computing our GDP is still a very flawed process. Many economists say that some of our expenses are not incorporated. These expenditures include household maintenance costs, such as food preparation or house cleaning, and everybody wants a clean house, obviously. Also, outsourcing of personal services poses a problem. Economists claim that many of our household expenses are being outsourced. We outsource our house cleaning, gardening, certain repairs, and others. We're not doing it ourselves. This natural change in lifestyle makes it impossible to come up with an accurate historical trend. We cannot compare our GDP to other countries from the third world because first world countries might be outsourcing more than third world countries. And that's not all. GDP also ignores negative effects of businesses such as environmental pollution, violation of labor laws, change of working conditions, and others. So how do we compute the cost of these damages, and how do we figure that into the GDP? Technology is another consideration. Technology could bump our GDP and also make things more efficient in our businesses and in our personal lives. Unfortunately, technological advances do not take place in a uniform manner each year. As a result, technology may skew GDP upward during certain years, which may in turn make the relative national debt level look acceptable when it's not. All this being said, we still need some estimates of our GDP. After all, the more we produce, the more taxes the government collects. And the government obviously loves that. Tax collection. And that's what we're going to discuss in our next video.